Here's an example of solving applications or word problems with the Pythagorean theorem. If you recall, the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It deals with a situation that's a right triangle. A and B are said to be the sides of the right triangle, and C is the diagonal side, also called the hypotenuse. Now in this example, we're told to use the Pythagorean theorem and the square root property to solve. Here we have a rectangular park that is 20 miles long and 10 miles wide. So it's 10 by 20. I'll just sketch this out for us. It asks how long is a pedestrian route that runs diagonally across the park. That's the question. We don't know how long that is. Now, if you notice, this diagonal, though, cuts our rectangle into two right triangles. So let's examine one of those right triangles to solve. On one of those right triangles, we see that we have the sides of 20 and 10. And this long side, the C, we do not know. However, if we set that up to solve, that would be 20 squared plus 10 squared equals c squared. 20 squared is 400. 10 squared is 100. And we simply add to get 500 equals c squared. Now let's take the square root of both sides. And if I take the square root of 500, I will get 22.4 miles, and I do not have to include positive and negative here because you can only have positive number of miles. So that pedestrian walkway must be about 22.4 miles long. This answer, though, is a decimal approximation. Sometimes you are asked to find the exact radical answer. That means when you take the square root of 500, you do not put it in the calculator. You will factor the 500, and that is 5 times 100. And we know 100 is a perfect square. It's 10 times 10. So that part would simplify. I would write that as 10 square root 5 because the 5 was not a perfect square. And that would be the exact radical answer. Now here's one more typical problem that would set up using the Pythagorean theorem. It says we have a 14-foot ladder that's 2 feet from the building, and the ladder reaches the flat roof. How tall is this building? We notice the right triangle, and this time my A and B sides are both 2 and H. I actually know what the diagonal is, the C, it's 14. So using the Pythagorean theorem, I will say that A is 2, the other side is just labeled H in the picture, and the C is 14. Now if we continue to solve, 14 squared will give us 196, and I will subtract 4 on both sides of this equation to give me 192, and then I will take the square root of both sides using the square root property. I do not have to include plus and minus, only the positive values, because remember, we're looking for the height here of the building. It can only be positive. And that's approximately 13.9 feet according to my calculator. Now again, this is the decimal approximation. If you were asked for the exact answer, the radical answer, then you go back to the square root of 192 and you would simplify there. So what we will do is go ahead and factor the 192 radicand. And if you think about it, 192 is 3 times 64. 64 is a perfect square, 8 times 8. So we can simplify that, and that would be 8 square root of 3. That's how you would get your exact simplified radical answer.